Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of All Nighter Discussions, where we discuss midnight movies, cult movies, and the like. Joining me today is frequent collaborator Alec White. Alec, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Gabe. How are you?
I'm good because we're going to be doing the most productive thing we can be doing during a pandemic, talking about movies.
Amen.
So, Alec, what film are we discussing today?
Today we are discussing the 2014 sleeper hit known as Creep.
Yeah, that's right. Now, when did you see Creep?
Creep, I saw it. Oh boy, that was probably back in September of 2019.
Yeah, so recently.
Yeah, pretty recently.
Yeah, I saw this film back in maybe 2016, 2017. I caught it on Netflix. I know that Mark Duplass, who plays the titular creep, he's an indie film darling, but I'd never seen a film of his up to that point.
hmm
And I know it's very different than the rest of his films. He makes kind of like real indie comedies usually. But just on the strength of this one film, I thought, well, we'll get to our thoughts of the film, but it's one of the best kind of comedians turned horror
hmm
filmmakers that I've ever seen. And this
Well,
is
this is
before, yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is his direct. This was his directorial debut, right?
Well,
Or no,
Patrick Bryce directed
Bryce.
it.
Yeah, Bryce's, not Duplass's.
Yeah. So, but in terms of performances, because there's a long history of comedic actors or comedic adjacent actors playing horror movie villains, and this is probably one of my favorite examples. But
hmm
getting into Creep, the premise centers around it's a found footage film, and it's about a videographer on I think Craigslist who gets hired to make spend a day with this guy. It's totally under mysterious circumstances. To spend a day with this guy played by Mark Duplass, who says that he is dying of cancer and he wants to make a video diary for his unborn son.
Yes.
Yes, and like I said, it's a found footage film, which is a dirty word for a lot of moviegoers, but this stands out as one of the exceptions to that rule. Like, how do you feel about found footage films, and how do you feel this stacks up in that genre?
So personally, I'm not a fan of found footage films. Uh, just because, like, to me, I don't care much for like the shaky cam style of things. Like that's kind of like the telltale sign of a found footage, like Cloverfield or Blair Witch, which I haven't seen Blair Witch, but I've seen like the trailer for it, and it's all the camera running through the woods and whatever.
Yeah, of
But I
course, the
really
actual
like
movie's
Creep.
not that bad. Just to let you know, the actual movie's not just like all shaky cam.
Yeah, I still want to see Blair Witch just to say I've seen it, if nothing else. But I really liked Creep watching it. It did not have the shaky cam, which I loved. I was expecting it for most of it, but there was never a moment where I was like, "Oh my god, like this is gonna make me vomit. It's so shaky." Uh, it's just the two actors the whole time. I mean, there's a girl's voice at one point, but they're the only two we ever see on camera, and just the acting in it is very believable, very good. It made it for a very enjoyable, intense experience.
Yeah, this film really stands out from the found footage genre because it defies a lot of tropes. Like, especially lately, there is a formula, an idea of the found footage film. Films like Chronicle or The Gallows, like they're centering around a group of friends, one of whom is just recording it. It's supposed to be a social occasion, and they're just
hmm
recording this event, and spooky stuff starts happening. And for some reason, the guy doesn't just put down the camera. But with this film, you get more of an explanation, you get more logic, and that's part of what makes Creep a superior found footage film. But it really comes down to the acting, I think, and the relationship
Oh
between these two
yeah,
characters.
yeah. The acting and their relationship definitely carry this whole film, and that's
Yeah,
that's what I liked about it. That other found footage films. I mean, I haven't seen like all of them, obviously, But to me, that's something that a lot of them miss is it's less about the acting and the relationships and more about the, ooh, look how creepy this is.
Yeah, and even just stepping away from found footage, just the horror genre right now, Creep even stands out from that because, I mean, this has changed a little bit recently, but there is no gore. Well, there are some jump scares, but they're pretty clever and pretty meta. There's no gratuitous violence, nudity, any of that. It is a really stripped down, offbeat psychological thriller about this guy played by Mark Duplass, he's just one of the most fascinating characters to me. Like his charisma, he's kind of the personification of of a car wreck or something. He is
Yeah.
so weird that you want to look away, but there's something so kind of unique about him that
Hmm.
keeps pulling you back.
Yeah, no, definitely. He's one of those characters, like you said, a car wreck, where you can tell like there's something off about this guy, but you want to like him. He's
Yeah, he
got
has a
that
very
likability.
sure. He has a real kind of bubbly energy. Like his
Hmm.
screen introduction is uh, him just going high, like really aggressively. And obviously, the big kind of theme of this movie is his character's isolation, his loneliness, and his need for a friend. Like that's the one thing we really know about him. He is a lonely guy, and he wants friendship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about the production of this movie just to add context, because this movie was shot without a script.
Oh
And
really?
yeah, without a script, without a budget, without a crew. It was just done with Patrick Bryce and Mark Duplass. They were like improvising the film as they went along. At some point, I think the film was going to be very different. They shot a lot of footage. They showed it to some friends, and their friends said, this is really more of like a psychological thriller.
Hmm.
Then I think it was probably going to be more of a dark comedy, but they decided to go in that direction. They made a bunch of different endings, and they went with obviously the one that's in the movie. And I think it really works as both a comedy and as a horror film. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I will say like when I watched the trailer and stuff, it definitely seemed more so like a found footage comedy than a found footage horror. I think it leaned a little more into like the thriller elements than the comedic elements. And like the comedy that's there, it works and it's funny, but it's not a typical like slapstick comedy like, oh look,
No,
this guy
not
just
at
ran
all.
into a tree, what an idiot. It's like that awkward tension funny where you don't know what else to do except laugh.
Yeah, this movie kind of reminded me of the. Do you watch The Office?
Yeah. I love that.
The dinner party scene, or the episode with
Exactly.
yeah, and what the greatest horror comedies work because the horror and the comedy are coming from the same place. They're coming from the same origin. And with Creep, it's the tension. It's just the sheer weirdness of Mark Duplass's character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really underrated on that front. But something else that makes it work, I think, is Patrick Bryce. We don't see him on camera a lot, but
Hmm.
he definitely serves as a really good, like an everyman, like somebody who's just kind of thrown into this weird situation.
Yeah, he's the straight man in this scenario.
Sure, and something that the movie also accomplishes is making you not kind of roll your eyes at this character, think he's a dumbass, because we're all thinking just leave, just get out of there. Like so many red flags,
Hmm.
but you don't blame him for still going along with it because again, Mark Duplass just has enough charisma. Like Mark Duplass will kind of go up right to the point, right to the edge of like where he's about to cross the line, and he steps back just in time.
Yeah, like you said, the whole car wreck analogy. Uh, what's his character name? Aaron, Adam? What is it? It's Aaron.
Oh, Patrick Bryce.
Yeah, his
Yeah,
character named
Aaron.
Aaron.
Yeah,
Yeah, so his character Aaron, his whole reason for going there is he needs the money. He's a filmmaker. He's going here to make money. And he gets there and he sees this out of the ordinary character. He's never really filmed anyone like this before. And like you said, he's weird enough to keep your interest and kind of like abrasive enough to kind of be like, okay, this guy's a little off-putting, a little weird, but he doesn't cross that line. So it keeps Aaron interested, and it keeps him wanting to film him. He wants to see like what's this guy's deal, and also the whole cancer thing for him doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. Mark Duplass's character Joseph, he's just a fantastic manipulator. Like he
Mhm.
introduces himself through this cancer story, and that's what buys him the kind of time he gets with Patrick Rice, because Patrick Rice doesn't want to be, he doesn't want to be a jerk. He wants to help out this guy who's in a really desperate situation, and you can probably chalk up all of these eccentricities to a man who's on death's door and can't handle it, like that really fabulous scene in the bathroom. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. What's it called? Footsies? Tootsies?
Uh, yeah. His I think it was his Tootsies. Yeah.
Yeah, gotta get those tootsies wet. That's
His very first thing he records. So if you haven't seen Creep and you're listening to this podcast, the character Aaron shows up at Joseph's house, which is in the middle of the woods, like as if it wasn't already creepy enough meeting some guy off Craigslist. He shows up, he meets Joseph, seems like a nice enough guy, tells him basically that he has a history of cancer, he went into remission, but he went back and they found out he had a brain tumor, terminal. He's got like 2 months to live tops, and his wife is currently pregnant with their child. She's not even far enough along yet to where they've made up a name for him, so that he's just going to call him Buddy. And he basically wants Aaron to document his like dying days, to show his son like that he had a father, he had a role model, and to kind of leave him like life lessons pretty much. And what's the first thing Joseph does? He invites Aaron upstairs to film him taking a bath with his fake baby, his invisible air
his
baby.
imaginary baby.
Yes.
Yeah. So and again, like he's going right up to the edge. Like I think most of us would call it quits right after that scene because it's just such a there's something so invasive about it, and you just kind of feel violated being in Aaron's shoes, because he's ostensibly forced or kind of coerced
Yeah.
into really doing some uncomfortable stuff. But like again, like Joseph's a fantastic manipulator, so he knows just when to dial up the sympathy stuff. Bring out the cancer story, bring out the his son story,
Oh no,
and
definitely. Like I feel like if it wasn't for that cancer story, if it was just like, hey, I got a son, I want to document this stuff for him, Aaron would have been out there from the get go.
sure,
But
but there's something interesting that kind of past the first third, the cancer story kind of stops being an element. Like more kind of pieces of the puzzle start getting put into place, and I
Mhm.
think like Joseph for one has a hard time keeping up with his lies, but it just becomes about like just about having a friend,
Yeah,
because when Aaron wants to leave after a certain point, Joseph just says, "Oh well, just one more drink," like with just that kind of like that really pathetic desperation in his
yeah, it's
voice.
a dying man who has nothing else. He doesn't have anybody else.
Yeah, and then we get to the wonderful confession of Joseph's, which is not recorded. It's not visually represented on screen in any way. We just see a black screen for probably 5 minutes while listening to the creepiest, most like blood curdling story I think I've ever heard.
Hmm.
And and that's when like you really start to see a shift. I feel like the movie is kind of ramping up its intensity and its thriller elements, and that's when it really shifts into a more pure horror movie, a more pure thriller.
Yeah, because up to that point, most of the horror had been coming from like little jump scares of Joseph like hopping out at Aaron or like running ahead into the forest. But this
Yeah.
is the first moment where you hear Joseph talk, and it's not just like, "Oh, this guy's kind of weird." It's, "Oh my God, what the hell's wrong with this guy?"
Oh yeah. Now, did you ever believe Joseph's story, or were you were you like thinking he was lying from the start?
I believed him in the beginning. I think the first time that I didn't believe him was after they went down into the forest and they went into the stream or whatever, and then they
Hmm.
went to the dining room or the diner after that, and they were kind of sitting there having their moment to moment. It felt like Joseph was trying to he was trying to up his ante to get something out of Aaron. He was trying to get something more out of Aaron when this was supposed to be about him the whole time. That was the first time that I saw it, and I was like, wait a second, why does he care so much about Aaron if he's trying to document his life for his kid?
Yeah, there's even a hint that Joseph's lying because he says that he goes to this place all the time, this restaurant, but when he gets there, he's like, okay, let's see what they have on the menu. Like, that's your first hint.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, I'm seeing reviews that said that most reviewers knew or believed Joseph was a liar from the start, but I don't know. I think Mark Duplass gives you enough credibility to this character because there is that desperation, and I
Hmm.
could very much believe that Joseph was a more normal guy who's you know experiences with cancer. Some people can't deal with that. Some people get really thrown by that, and I believe this could be a story about a man who's just uh, was kind of driven insane by that, but
Yeah,
it
exactly.
starts
I
to
I
reveal
did.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely in the beginning, I didn't think he was lying.
Yeah. Did you believe
In the
that he was
beginning,
dangerous? Like, did you believe that was a possibility?
I didn't. He seemed kind of like that, kind of like a naive puppy. Like he had some weird tendencies about him that was like, oh, okay, this is a weird guy. But I mean, we've all met weird people that are harmless. So
Sure.
I didn't really get the idea that he was threatening until like the first jump scare, and I was like, okay, Aaron's intimidated by this guy.
Well, we get introduced to Joseph through a jump scare, which I mean, everybody usually hates jump scares. I think this movie does them really well.
Yeah, no, that first jump scare where he's like hi or whatever, that one didn't tip me off to it because I thought that was more his personality, like over the top, like loud. This is Joseph.
Yeah, and it is, and that's what keeps you guessing. It's like it it seems like this could just be his eccentricities, but we know the truth only when it's too late. So
Yeah.
let's get into that third act and that kind of tonal shift that goes on. Also, like the location changes because we move from Joseph's cabin out into the woods to
Hmm.
um, Aaron's place.
Yeah.
What do you think of that kind of last third act compared
So
to
I mean, it
the?
was definitely it was a big shift, and it kind of took me off guard because we'd been at that cabin the entire movie, so I wasn't really expecting the change in the last minute. I thought the rest of the story was going to take place right there in the cabin, especially after uh, Joseph steals Aaron's keys after they're drinking, and basically tells me he's spend the night he's drunk. So Joseph takes it upon himself to or Aaron takes it upon himself to drug Joseph's drink, and when he's passed out, try to find his keys. In the process, Joseph's phone rings. Aaron answers the phone. It's Joseph's sister, basically telling him, "Don't believe anything he says. He's a liar. He doesn't have cancer." All this stuff, and then we meet Peach Fuzz in the flesh, which
Peach
Peach
Fuzz.
Fuzz
That was
is.
going to be the name of the movie, Peach Fuzz.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they changed it last minute because they didn't want people asking what's Peach Fuzz like the first 30 minutes.
Oh,
Smart move, but yeah,
that
Peach
is a smart
Fuzz.
move.
Yeah, but that's the iconic image of the movie. Peach Fuzz is like this, the image that has transcended into the horror kind of landscape. Jason's got his hockey mask. Michael Myers has the white mask. Creep has Peach Fuzz.
Yes, and if you don't know what peach fuzz is, it's this disgustingly creepy looking wolf head, like a
Yeah,
wolf
this wolf
mask.
mask that
And
Joseph
it's
claims
the same
was.
mask that Joseph apparently wore when he raped his wife.
Yes, but when we're introduced to Fuzz, Joseph tells us that it was this thing from his childhood. His dad would wear it when singing him lullabies. They had a special
Mhm.
Peach Fuzz song. But Peach Fuzz is kind of emblematic of the movie because it's supposedly this innocent thing that gets wholly corrupted and wholly perverted throughout the runtime, or its true nature is revealed to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, personally, I thought, and this is a spoiler here, but I thought when um, Bryce had his confrontation with Peach Fuzz, at that door, which is,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that was the scariest part of the movie. Just that weird little dance
Yeah.
that Joseph was doing. That was so well done.
Oh,
But
exactly.
I thought that was going to be the end. I thought once the camera fell over and cut to black, I thought it was going to be the end.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. And I believe that they should have ended it there because I don't love the third act as much, and that's where I start having logic issues with the movie. That's where I start
Mm-hmm.
having just more questions, and it's a little bit sloppier.
Yeah, that's definitely where it goes back into it reverts back to like a typical run of the mill found footage. Like, okay, so Aaron escapes, he makes it back to his home, and then he starts like filming himself while he sleeps at night, paranormal activity style. Um, and then he starts receiving packages, right, from Joseph.
Yeah.
And remind me what's inside the package. I forgot what the first one was.
So, and the first package was a DVD containing footage of Joseph just digging a grave, and then Joseph also sends him a knife, and the last one is like a friendship bracelet.
But it
So
was
it's just
inside
like,
of an animal, right? Like inside a stuffed animal.
I think so, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because
just
I
all
think
these.
Aaron had to cut it open with the knife he gave him.
Yeah, that sounds right. But it's just these weird symbols that can only mean something to Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
But that stuff is creepy. But here are two main problems. Joseph is not really a character in this section. He appears, and there is one pretty good sequence I think where you can see him in the background when Bryce thinks there's somebody in his house. You can see him outside the window. That was a really
Oh
well
yeah.
composed shot. But Joseph's character, his presence isn't really there, and that's what was really driving the movie. So you really start to miss that.
Yeah,
Second,
no, it was a weird slowdown in the movie. Like we built up to the climax, and then this was kind of like it was supposed to be a resolution, I guess. Like it was supposed to resolve the rest of the movie, but it felt more like it was just the climax, and then the movie dipped for like 10 minutes, and then the real climax of the movie.
yeah, but there are also some serious logic issues, right? So Aaron has an encounter with this creepy guy. Creepy guy knows where he lives now, and
Hmm.
creepy guy is sending him all these threatening things. Aaron calls the police, and we don't hear what the police say, but I guess they just don't do anything.
I guess not.
They just don't. Um, you can hear him on the phone with them, and at some point he says, "Oh, thanks, you've been so helpful." Like I've
What did
never
they do?
I've never had the reason to call the police about a stalking incident, but I have to believe that with this much evidence, you have to. Also, he has videos, right? He has
Yeah, he has
videos that show
little
the police.
footage.
Yeah,
He
he
has
has
a
footage.
confession.
It's a confession. Exactly. So that's just, I mean, if the police helped more, the movie would be over. It couldn't happen.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think Aaron kind of really does start to act like an idiot. Like he films himself for no reason sometimes, and it's like, okay, whatever, you roll with it.
Hmm.
But then he thinks someone's in his house. He goes outside of his house in the middle of the night. He leaves his door wide open, and that's of course how Joseph gets into his house. But Aaron, just under these circumstances, is not acting, I think, like a real person would. Would you
No,
agree?
he's acting like a pawn in a horror movie. How do we get him inside?
Yes, exactly. So that's a little disappointing. I definitely think the first two thirds are by far um, the best section.
Yeah, and then of course, like we said, the whole train wreck thing plays into a part of why he's so interested in like keeping this contact with Joseph still, and even like feeling bad that Joseph has nobody, because that's ultimately what drives us to the end of the movie.
Sure. And while we talk about that ending, what did you think?
I really liked the ending. I liked the ending a lot. Uh, I mean, I agree with what you said about it would have been good to end it there with Peach Fuzz standing in the doorway and then knocking the camera out of his hand. That would have been a cool ending also. This one just took me off guard because of that lull in the story when we see just Aaron at his house. Like, it's creepy, but it's slow. And then, so spoiler alert, the movie ends with Aaron basically agrees to go meet Joseph at this park to kind of just talk to him, to give him a friend, pretty much. Like, he feels bad. He feels like the guy's crazy because he has nobody. So he thinks if he could just be a friend to this guy, he could help him.
Sure.
So he goes and he meets the guy at the park, and he gets there. Joseph's not there yet. So he sets up his camera on his dashboard. Sorry, choked. He sets the camera on his dashboard, pointing at this bench.
We're keeping that
by a
social
tree.
distance, right?
Yeah, social distancing. But he points the camera at this bench in this park, and he goes and sits on the bench waiting for Joseph. While he's sitting there waiting, back turned, Joseph basically walks up behind him and plows an axe into his head.
Yes, and something really excellent about this movie is they just set up the perfect shots. Like, one shot can tell so much of the story.
Yes.
Like, I think there are many sequences where it's just a static shot, and Patrick Brice and Mark Duplass obviously had to do a lot of heavy choreography to make sure all of the action could fit into this one shot. It's all very well executed, very well done. I do like the ending. I would be a little more impressed probably if it not had been preceded by, I think, some weaker material.
Yeah.
And I still think that Aaron's being kind of an idiot. He just sits down at this bench. He doesn't turn around, and they kind of explain it away, like in the last 2 minutes of the movie. But
yeah,
flaws aside, problems aside.
Wait. And then, sorry, I forgot that wasn't actually the very end.
No,
Because then Joseph walks over and he collects the video camera, right?
He does. Well, he jump scares himself, which I think that was hilarious.
Yeah, so he's basically this whole end part that we're watching where he plows the axe into Aaron's head, right? Aaron? Yeah. Joseph is actually already at home watching this footage in like his private screening room. Sorry, I'm like choking on my spit here. And then he jump scares himself in the camera. Like, he walked up to the camera in the hood of the car and he jumped into it and he's like, ah, and he screams for a while, scaring himself watching it. And then he takes the VHS out and he puts it on a shelf with like probably hundreds of other tapes. He's done this many times before.
And and it ends with him getting another call, somebody responding to his ad. He's using a different name now, and the story continues.
Yep, and then that sets it up for Creep 2, which I have not seen yet.
I've seen roughly 30 minutes of it, and we can go into it a little bit because I know a bit about it. But returning to this first movie, Creep, I don't know if Joseph has the potential to become like a horror movie icon, like Jason. First off, his MO is too strange. It's too bizarre. Like Jason and Michael, you can like throw into any situation. All they do is kill people. But Joseph is too sophisticated and nuanced of a character, I think, to just like milk for a franchise, which is good. Yeah, that's to the movie's benefit. But with them making supposedly a trilogy, Creep 3 is in the works. I think they still want to make that happen. Personally, I think Creep was great as a one-off. That's probably why I saw some of the sequel, but I didn't feel the need to watch all of it. But it's on Netflix, I think, so maybe we'll get around
to it. I'll check it out. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. At the end of that movie, I did not feel like there was going to be a sequel or needed to be a sequel. Just because like it's so good in its own little contained universe. Like, okay, watching this ending, he's going to keep doing this. He's going to keep lying to people to film him so he can kill them.
I think there's a fallacy in Hollywood today or filmmaking today. Like, if a movie has an open ending, that does not mean there has to be a sequel. An open ending works for the film's containment because it leaves you with that lingering feeling. He's still out there. That's very unsettling. He's going to keep doing this. The best example of this is Halloween, the first 1978 Halloween. Have you seen that?
I have not. I have
Well,
not.
I'm,
Halloween is one of the trilogies. Like I've seen Friday the 13th, the first one, um, but like Halloween is one that I've wanted to watch, and I feel like I need to sit down and watch them all like within a time frame so I can get the
okay.
feel of them all.
Well, there are 11 of these things, so yeah,
Yes.
just carve out an entire day. Don't watch all of them. Don't want to pivot to an entirely different franchise, but don't watch all of them. Just 3 or 4 maybe. But
Okay.
but I don't. So do you know the ending of Halloween?
I do not.
The first one. Okay.
No.
Well, there are sequels. It's not a spoiler to say Michael Myers does get away. It's
No.
a really good ending, great ending, and I think people saw that and thought, oh, there has to be a sequel now because there's no resolution. No, it's just to get under your skin. He's still out there. That's what made it an effective ending. But you see the sequels. Oh, actually, he just he just went off to kill more people. Okay, didn't need to see that, but thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why they make sequels because they want to make money. Uh, but in the purpose of a story, I feel like to make this into a trilogy, it's either going to turn into something that it's not. Like it's going to turn into like a B grade horror movie, like just
Mm-hmm.
like all the other found footage films that are oversaturating the market, or it's going to turn into like a I don't even know, like a shell of its former self. Like it's going to come
Oh
become
yeah,
satirical of itself.
oh yeah, a self-parody, that happens to all the major horror franchises: Halloween,
Yeah.
Friday, Nightmare on Elm Street. Some of them start out comic, like kind of self-parodies already. Like, you ever seen Leprechaun?
I have seen parts of it.
Okay, yeah. So there's nowhere to go, but it's either up or a straight line because there's no going down after the first Leprechaun. So that's fine.
Yeah.
But with Creep, yeah, I think it should have been kept contained because I saw 30 minutes of Creep 2 and it wasn't terrible. Like I would happily finish it if
Hmm.
if I had nothing better to do. But what I noticed is that it really leaned into the comedy to the point where I felt like it was just a comedy, like a dark comedy.
Yeah.
And they have a similar formula. They try to subvert it. I'll just give you the premise right now.
Okay.
Joseph hires another videographer, but now he's upfront about himself. He says, "I'm a serial killer. I he like has lost his inspiration. He feels like he's lost his edge, so he wants to make a documentary about himself, I guess, to kind of creatively rejuvenate himself."
Oh,
It's like,
okay.
okay, okay, that might be funny. Except I have seen this premise done to the T. It was
Hmm.
done in 2004. It was called Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. It is great. It's a modern classic in my eyes. So, Creep 2, it has a serious uphill battle to climb. Let's say that.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely still want to watch it, like you said, just to see it, see where they go with the story. But I don't feel like it was necessary.
Yeah, but it also didn't seem offensive. So if they want to keep making sequels, I mean, they can. Don't get upset about it.
Yeah.
People are going to make bad sequels for the rest of time. That's just something
As
that's
long
going to
as
happen.
people will watch, there will be sequels.
Sometimes even, I mean, they've made 7 Leprechauns. I don't know how many people saw Leprechaun 6. I
That's a
really
good
don't.
question.
I think, it's just too much of a tradition almost. Like, I think if you're making a thriller, a horror movie, and you don't have a sequel, you probably feel like left out.
Yeah.
Where are my sequels? Where's my Part 8 Jason Takes Manhattan?
I just looked up Leprechaun 6, and it's called Leprechaun 6 Back to the Hood.
That's also a modern classic, by the way.
Really?
No. But maybe we'll do a whole talk about the Leprechaun franchise. That'd be interesting. But yeah, final thoughts on Creep. What would you say?
Final thoughts on Creep. I really enjoyed it, and I don't like found footage films. So if I enjoyed it, that means it's a good film, not just a good found footage film.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I would
This
definitely
stands out.
recommend it.
This stands out for sure as one of the few good found footage films that we have right now.
Oh,
Um, I think it's definitely it's meant more for indie audiences, indie drama
definitely.
leaning audiences than horror movie audiences. It probably is trying to bridge those two demographics, and I think it succeeds. So I would highly recommend Creep, obviously because I recommended it to you and a couple other people. It's probably too much to say that it's a modern classic. That it's, I think, a great movie in that sort of way. But
Mhm.
it's I think we're very lucky to have Creep
Oh, I
because there's
think
a
so
lot of
too. It
mediocrity out there.
it it gave the found footage film, I feel like it gave it its footing back. It shows that it's not just something that people like. It's not something anyone can do well.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
And of course, I'm making it sound like there are no other good found footage movies. There are. I think Chronicle was pretty good. Um, and I think the first Cloverfield has its moments. But
Yeah.
this would probably be my second favorite found footage movie next to with the Blair Witch Project.
Still need to
Yeah.
watch it. I know many people see like Paranormal Activity as like the definitive found footage genre film
I
or
mean, it's
whatever.
definitive in its own way.
Hmm.
I don't think that speaks to the quality of those movies because I'm definitely not a fan, but
Yeah, no,
it's
I'm
got its
I'm
own
not a
style.
big fan of like paranormal horror movies either. Like I like this type of horror, like the everyday like person.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think that horror movies are really defined by their villains. Like, I really love a villain with, motivations, psychologies. Um, I like icons. And
Yeah.
paranormal movies, kind of by definition, cannot have those things. The villains are abstract, or they're ghosts, and that probably limits their appeal to me.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, Creep, go check it out if you haven't. If you haven't, sorry you heard this because we did spoil it for you.
Yeah, sorry, but not sorry, because you need to go watch it.
Yeah, go watch it. It's on Netflix. Go check it out. Check out Creep 2 if you're so inclined. And that concludes this all nighter discussion. Alec White, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me, Gabe.
All right. And we will catch you guys next time with a new movie. What should we talk
Peace
about?
out.
Let us know in the comments.